James set his duffel bag down carefully and reached for his wallet, his movements slow and deliberate. He'd been black in America long enough to know the protocol. No sudden movements. No attitude. Comply first, question later. Of course, officer, he said evenly, pulling out his military ID and handing it over. Officer Webb barely glanced at it. His eyes were fixed on James's face, studying him with undisguised suspicion. What's in the bag? Personal belongings. I'm traveling home on leave. Open it. James felt the first flutter of irritation in his chest, but kept his expression neutral. Around them, people were starting to slow down, sensing something happening. A few commuters had already pulled out their phones. Officer, is there a specific reason I'm being detained? I've provided identification. I'll decide what's specific enough, Webb snapped. Open the bag, or I'll open it myself. James crouched down and unzipped his duffel. Inside, neatly folded, were his service uniforms, his dress whites, a smaller bag with his toiletries, and a wrapped package from Miss Gloria. She'd somehow mailed cookies to his base in Spain, and he was bringing the tin back. Webb grabbed the dress uniform and pulled it out roughly, shaking it as if something might fall out. James's metals rattled against the fabric. The officer's eyes narrowed. Where'd you get this? The question was so absurd that James almost laughed. I earned it, officer. I'm a lieutenant commander in the United States Navy. My ID clearly states. Anybody can get a fake ID. Webb tossed the uniform back into the bag carelessly. One of James's medals, his Navy and Marine Corps Commendation Medal, earned during a humanitarian mission in Haiti, fell onto the dirty station floor. James felt his calm beginning to crack. He picked up the medal slowly, brushing off the dirt. Officer Webb, he said, reading the name tag. I understand you're doing your job, but I've complied with every request. I've shown you identification. I've shown you my uniform. I have my orders right here. He reached into the bag's side pocket. Don't reach for anything. Webb's hand flew to his service weapon. The crowd around them gasped and backed away. Several people started recording more obviously now. A woman grabbed her child and hurried toward the exits. James froze, his hand halfway into the pocket. His heart was pounding now, but his voice remained steady. Officer, I'm reaching for my deployment orders. Paper. Just paper. Step away from the bag. Officer Webb. Step away from the bag. James straightened up slowly, hands visible, palms out. This was escalating fast, too fast. Something was wrong with this officer. The sergeant looked at James, then at the uniform spilling out of his bag, then at Webb. Her expression was carefully neutral, but James saw something flicker in her eyes. Doubt. Maybe even recognition. Sir, may I see your identification? She asked James, her tone professional but not hostile. James handed her his military ID. She examined it carefully, turning it over, checking the holographic seal, running her finger over the embossed text. Webb shifted impatiently beside her. This looks legitimate, she said slowly. They're getting better at making fakes, Webb insisted. The sergeant looked at him. Webb, this has a DoD seal, proper formatting, magnetic strip. With respect, Sarge, I've been doing this 23 years. I know a con when I see one. James watched this exchange with a growing sense of unreality. This couldn't be happening. He was a commissioned officer in the United States Navy. He had security clearance. He'd briefed admirals. He'd coordinated operations involving millions of dollars of equipment. And now he was standing in Penn Station being accused of, what? Pretending to be himself? The sergeant handed his ID back. Sir, I apologize for the inconvenience. You're free to go. Relief flooded through James. Thank you, Sergeant. Belay that. Webb cut in. I'm not satisfied with this identification. I'm detaining him for further verification. The sergeant turned to Webb sharply. Officer Webb, I'm telling you this ID is legitimate. Let the man catch his train. And I'm telling you, Sergeant Morrison, that I have reasonable suspicion to detain this individual. They stared at each other. James could see the calculation in Sergeant Morrison's eyes. She outranked Webb, but Challenging him publicly, on camera, with all these phones recording, would mean paperwork, investigations, union grievances. She made her choice.
Fine.
But do it by the book, Webb.
By the
book. She walked away, but not before giving James a look that said, "I'm sorry." James felt something cold settle in his stomach. This was really happening. Webb pulled out his radio. "Dispatch, this is Officer Webb, badge 4729. I need backup at Platform 7 Concourse for a detention." "Officer Webb," James said quietly, "before this goes any further, I'm asking you, I'm begging you, to look at my credentials properly. Call the Navy's personnel verification line. It's a 1-800 number. Takes 3 minutes. You'd love for me to call your accomplice, wouldn't you? It's the Department of the Navy, officer. The federal government. I know how these scams work." Webb's backup arrived. The station seemed to tilt. James heard someone in the crowd shout, "This is crazy," but it sounded distant, muffled, like he was underwater. "Officer Webb, I am not impersonating anyone. I am a military officer. If you detain me unlawfully, you will face serious consequences." "Are you threatening me?" Webb stepped closer, invading James's personal space. Did everyone hear that? He just threatened a police officer. That's not what he said. A woman in the crowd called out. Her phone was up, recording everything. We all heard him. He's not threatening anyone. Webb spun toward her. "Ma'am, step back or I'll cite you for interfering with police business." Officer Martinez looked uncomfortable. She'd found nothing in the bag except exactly what James said would be there: clothes, toiletries, military uniforms, official documents. She held up a folder. "Webb, these orders look official. They've got stamps, signatures, official seals." "I don't care if they've got the president's signature," Webb snapped. "I'm not convinced." Officer Thompson, the youngest of the three, spoke up hesitantly. "Maybe we should call someone? Like verify with the Navy or something?" Webb rounded on him. "Did I ask for your opinion, Thompson?" "No, sir, but..." "Then keep your mouth shut and do your job." James watched this interaction carefully. Webb was spiraling, becoming more aggressive as he felt his authority challenged. This was dangerous. James had seen it before in boot camp from certain drill instructors who confused leadership with domination. Those officers either learned or washed out. But Webb had somehow made it 23 years without learning. "Officer Webb," James tried once more, forcing his voice to stay calm and respectful. "I understand there may have been miscommunications. Let's start over. My name is James Okonkwo. I'm a lieutenant commander stationed at Naval Station Rota in Spain. I landed at JFK this afternoon, and I'm heading home to Baltimore to see my father. Here's what I'm asking. Call the base duty officer at Rota. I'll give you the number. They can verify my identity in minutes." For just a moment, James thought he saw doubt flicker across Webb's face. A crack in the certainty. Then Webb's radio crackled. "Dispatch to Officer Webb. Be advised we're getting multiple 911 calls about your situation. Callers are reporting excessive force." The crack sealed shut. Webb's jaw clenched. Now he had witnesses calling 911 on him, making him look bad, questioning his judgment. His pride wouldn't let him back down now. "Copy that, dispatch. Situation is under control." He turned back to James, and his eyes had gone cold. "Sir, Webb's face went purple. "We'll see about that. Turn around." James took a deep breath and turned around. He felt Webb's rough hands grab his wrists and yank them behind his back harder than necessary. The metal cuffs bit into his skin, clicked tight, too tight, cutting off circulation. "Those are too tight, officer," James said calmly. "They're fine. They're cutting off my circulation. You need to loosen them one notch." "I said they're fine." A man in a business suit pushed through the crowd. "Officer, I'm an attorney. I'm witnessing this entire interaction, and I'm telling you right now, this is unlawful detention. That man has provided identification. Sir, step back or you'll be arrested for obstruction." The attorney held his ground. "My name is David Chin. I'm with Morrison and Associates. I'm giving you my card." He tried to hand it to Webb. I don't want your damn card. Martinez, if he doesn't back up, arrest him. David Chin stepped back, but he didn't leave. He stayed at the edge of the crowd, phone out, recording. Webb grabbed James's arm and started pulling him toward the station security office. James kept his head up, his dignity intact, even as he was paraded through Penn Station in handcuffs. He could hear the whispers, see the pointing, feel the eyes of hundreds of strangers watching his humiliation. His duffel bag still lay on the ground, contents spilling out. His medals, his uniform, his orders, his whole life on display like trash. Officer Martinez, James called back. Please secure my belongings. There are sensitive documents in that bag. Martinez picked up the bag, carefully gathering everything. James saw her fold his uniform with respect, saw her collect his medals gently. At least she understood what they meant. They were halfway to the security office when a young black woman, maybe 19 or 20, stepped forward. She looked terrified but determined. "Excuse me," she said, her voice shaking. "I'm a journalism student at NYU. Can I ask the officer why?" "No comment. Get out of the way." "But sir, the public has a right." "Move or be moved." The girl stepped aside, but James saw her recording on her phone. He saw dozens of other phones recording. In this moment, Marcus Webb had no idea he was creating a viral video that would be on every news channel by morning. They reached the security office, a small, windowless room with a desk, a few chairs, and concrete walls that seemed to close in immediately. Webb shoved James into a chair. Martinez, Thompson, wait outside. "Webb, protocol says we should." Martinez began. "I said wait outside." They exchanged glances but complied, closing the door behind them. Now, James said nothing. There was nothing left to say. Webb had made up his mind, and pride wouldn't let him unmake it. So James sat in that chair, hands cuffed painfully behind his back, and waited. Webb paced for another minute, then pulled out his phone. "I'm calling this into the precinct. Let them sort out your fake story." While Webb was on the phone, James closed his eyes and ran through mental calculations. His train left in 23 minutes. Even if this was resolved in the next 10 minutes, unlikely he'd miss it. The next train to Baltimore wasn't until 7:15 p.m. His father would worry. Miss Gloria would keep the food warm. Everyone would wonder what happened. And beyond the inconvenience, beyond the humiliation, James felt something deeper and darker settling into his bones. The knowledge that this could happen to him. Despite everything he'd accomplished, everywhere he'd been, everyone he'd become, at the end of the day, in the eyes of one angry police officer, none of it mattered. He'd served his country for 12 years. He'd coordinated humanitarian missions. He'd earned the respect of admirals and enlisted personnel alike. He'd represented the United States Navy in 3 different countries. And here he sat, handcuffed in a concrete room, being treated like a criminal. The door opened. Sergeant Morrison stepped in, her expression grave. "Webb, we need to talk." "Outside." "I'm in the middle of." "Now, Officer Webb." Webb shot James a warning look. "Don't move, don't speak," and followed Morrison out. The door didn't close completely. James could hear their voices, Morrison's low and urgent, Webb's defensive and loud. Multiple complaints coming in. "Doing my job." "Supervisor wants you to release him." "Not finished with my investigation." "Documents check out." "Webb. Could be forged." Lieutenant from the transit police looked at everything, says it's legitimate. Still not convinced. Officer Martinez slipped into the room. She looked at James with something like apology in her eyes and pulled out a handcuff key. "I'm going to adjust these," she said quietly. "They're too tight. Don't tell Webb." She loosened the cuffs 2 notches. Blood rushed back into James's hands, pins and needles shooting up his arms. He hadn't realized how numb they'd gone. "Thank you," James said. "I'm sorry," she whispered. This isn't right. Those documents are real. Anyone with half a brain can see that." "Tell that to your partner." "He's not my partner. I just transferred to the station last month." She paused. "My brother's in the Army. Fort Bragg. When I saw your medals, I knew." I just knew. The door burst open. Webb was back. Officer Webb, Sullivan said, his voice cold and formal. Release this man immediately and return his belongings. Captain, I was just explaining to the suspect. He's not a suspect. He's a United States naval officer who you detained for nearly 3 hours without cause. Uncuff him.
Now.
Webb's jaw worked, but he pulled out his keys and unlocked the handcuffs. James stood slowly, rubbing his wrists where red marks showed where the metal had bitten into his skin. His hands were shaking, not from fear, but from 3 hours of suppressed anger finally finding release. Captain Sullivan extended his hand. Lieutenant Commander Okonkwo, I apologize on behalf of the transit police for this incident. Your belongings are being held at the main desk. If you'll come with me, I'll personally ensure they're returned to you intact. James shook his hand. Thank you, Captain. As they walked out, James saw the crowd was still there, smaller now, but still watching, still recording. He saw David Chun, the attorney, still waiting. He saw the young journalism student from NYU, with her phone out. He saw dozens of strangers who'd given up hours of their evening to bear witness. They applauded when he walked out. It wasn't a roar, just a scattering of claps that grew into something more sustained. A few people shouted, "Justice," and we saw what happened. One older woman called out, "God bless you, son. We were praying for you." James nodded to them, his throat tight. He couldn't speak. If he spoke, he might break. At the desk, his duffel bag waited. Martinez had repacked it carefully, folding everything with respect. His medals were there. His uniform was there. Even the cookies, or what was left of them, had been gathered into a plastic bag. Captain Sullivan handed him a card. My direct number. I want you to call me tomorrow so we can discuss what happened here today. Officer Webb will be facing disciplinary review, but I want to hear your full account. James pocketed the card. Captain, I just want to go home to my father. Of course. The next train to Baltimore leaves at 7:15. We'll hold it for you, if necessary. And Lieutenant Commander? Sullivan's voice dropped. For what it's worth, this should never have happened. I'm deeply sorry. James looked at him, really looked at him, and saw genuine remorse. It helped a little. Thank you, Captain. Now, before we continue with what happened next, I want to hear from you watching this video. Where are you watching from? Are you in the United States? Nigeria?
Ghana? Kenya?
The UK? Drop your location in the comments below. I love knowing where our viewers are tuning in from around the world. And if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. The train ride to Baltimore was a blur. James found a window seat in a nearly empty car and sat with his duffel bag clutched on his lap like a shield. Every time the door between cars opened, every time someone walked past, his shoulders tensed. He hated that he felt this way, hypervigilant, suspicious, raw. A conductor came by to check tickets. The man was white, middle-aged, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. Ticket, please? James fumbled for it, hands still unsteady. As he handed it over, the conductor's eyes fell on the military ID poking out of James's shirt pocket. Navy man? The conductor asked, smiling. James nodded, not trusting his voice. Thank you for your service. The conductor punched his ticket and moved on, oblivious to the fact that those 5 words, sincere as they were, made James want to laugh or cry or scream. He'd been thanked for his service 1,000 times. But today, in Penn Station, his service hadn't mattered at all. His phone buzzed constantly, text messages flooding in. Somehow, the video from Penn Station had already hit social media. Twitter was exploding with hashtags. Hashtag Justice for Okonkwo. Hashtag Naval Officer Arrested. Hashtag Penn Station Incident. Maya Johnson, the journalism student, had posted her footage. Within an hour, it had been shared 10,000 times. The video showed everything: Webb's aggression, James's calm compliance, the crowd's outrage, the humiliating march through the station in handcuffs. James watched the video once, then put his phone face down on the seat. He couldn't watch himself being degraded again. Once had been more than enough. His father called twice more during the journey. James let it go to voicemail the first time. He still couldn't talk about it without his throat closing up. The second time, he answered but kept it brief. Almost there, Dad. Another 40 minutes. I'm fine. Really? He wasn't fine. He wouldn't be fine for a long time. The train pulled into Baltimore Penn Station at 9:03 p.m., 4.5 hours later than planned. James gathered his bag and stepped onto the platform, and there was his father. Emmanuel Okonkwo had aged since James last saw him 18 months ago. The stroke had left him with a slight droop to the left side of his face and a cane that he leaned on heavily. But his eyes were the same, warm, intelligent, fiercely loving. James. James dropped his bag and wrapped his arms around his father, holding him tight. Emmanuel was shorter than James by several inches, frielier than he used to be, but still solid, still real, still home. I saw the video, Emmanuel said quietly. Half of Baltimore has seen it by now. It's on the news, son. Channel 5, Channel 9, all of them. James pulled back. Already. You're famous. Not the way anyone wants to be famous, but... Emmanuel cupped his son's face with one hand. Are you hurt?
No.
Just tired. Come on. Miss Gloria's waiting. She kept everything warm. They walked through the Baltimore station, so much smaller and quieter than Penn Station, and out to Emmanuel's old Honda Civic. James insisted on driving despite his father's protests. He needed something to do with his hands, something to focus on besides the churning in his gut. The drive through Baltimore's streets was familiar and comforting. Past the row houses with their marble steps, past the corner store where James used to buy candy as a kid, past the church where his mother's funeral had been held. Every block was a memory. Miss Gloria was waiting on the front steps of Emmanuel's building when they pulled up. She was a stout woman. James stood and embraced his father again. You did protect me. You and Mom, you gave me the tools to survive what happened today. I kept my composure because you taught me how. I kept my dignity because you showed me mine was worth keeping.
I'm here, Dad.
I'm home. That's what matters. Miss Gloria was crying now, dabbing at her eyes with a napkin. Your mama's looking down from heaven, and she's so proud of you, baby. So proud. They sat back down, and the conversation turned to practicalities. The lawyer, David Chen, had called Emmanuel's house phone 3 times. News reporters wanted interviews. The video had over 1 million views now. The NAACP had issued a statement. The Navy's Public Affairs Office had called, asking for James's account of events. What are you going to do? Emmanuel asked. James pushed his food around his plate. I don't know. Part of me wants to forget it ever happened. Go back to base when my leave is up, move on with my life. And the other part? The other part wants to make sure Marcus Webb never does this to anyone else. Miss Gloria reached across the table and took his hand. Whatever you decide, baby, you know we're behind you. But don't decide tonight. Tonight you eat. You rest. You remember you're loved. The rest can wait. James squeezed her hand. Yes, ma'am. After dinner, he went to his childhood bedroom. Miss Gloria hadn't been lying. His old posters were still up. Michael Jordan, Denzel Washington, a map of the world with pins marking places he'd wanted to visit. Most of those pins were in countries where he'd actually been now, courtesy of the Navy. His phone was still buzzing. He scrolled through messages from fellow officers, from friends from the academy, from his commanding officer, Captain Rodriguez, who'd written, James, I saw what happened. I'm furious. Call me when you can. There was also a message from an unknown number. Lieutenant Commander Okonkwo, this is Officer Martinez from Penn Station. I wanted to apologize personally for what you went through today. I should have done more to stop it. I know this doesn't fix anything, but I'm sorry. I've filed a statement supporting you in the internal investigation. If you need anything, please reach out. James stared at that message for a long time. Martinez had been kind. She'd loosened his handcuffs, repacked his bag with respect, tried to speak up. But she'd also stood by while it happened. She'd chosen her career over doing the right thing in that moment. Could he blame her? Probably not. The system punished officers who broke ranks, who contradicted their superiors, who chose conscience over the chain of command. Martinez had done what most people would do, tried to help in small ways while protecting herself. But small ways weren't enough. Not anymore. The fluorescent lights of Penn Station flickered overhead as Officer Marcus Webb's voice echoed through the crowded terminal, sharp and unforgiving. I said get on the ground. Now. Hundreds of commuters froze mid-step. Cell phones rose like a forest of glowing rectangles. All cameras pointed at the same scene, a tall black man in casual clothes, hands raised, standing perfectly still near Platform 7. His duffel bag lay at his feet where the officer had kicked it. The man's face was calm, too calm, but his jaw was set tight, and something dangerous flickered in his eyes. "Officer, I've already shown you my identification," the man said quietly, his voice steady despite the service weapon pointed at his chest. "Fake ID doesn't mean nothing to me," Officer Webb shouted, his face flushed red, spit flying from his lips. "I've dealt with your kind before. You think you can just waltz through here with stolen military papers?" The crowd gasped. Someone whispered, "Oh my God, is he really doing this?" The man's hands didn't waver. "I'm asking you one more time, officer. Look at the credentials properly. Look at the uniform insignia on my bag tag." But Marcus Webb wasn't listening. He'd been having the worst month of his 23-year career. 3 complaints filed against him. A demotion looming. His wife had left him. And now this guy, this smug, well-spoken guy, was making him look like a fool in front of all these people with their cameras. "Turn around. Hands behind your back." The man closed his eyes slowly, took one deep breath, and complied. The crowd murmured as Officer Webb roughly grabbed his wrists, metal cuffs clicking into place with unnecessary force. "You're making a mistake," the man said quietly. "The only mistake," Webb hissed into his ear, "is you thinking you could fool me." As Webb shoved the handcuffed man forward, the duffel bag fell open. Its contents spilled across the dirty station floor, a crisp Navy service uniform, medals still pinned to the chest. A military ID card skittered across the tile, landing face up near a woman's shoe. She picked it up, her eyes widening. "Oh no," she breathed. "Oh no, no, no." The name on the card read, Lieutenant Commander James Okonkwo, United States Navy. But Officer Webb didn't see it. He was too busy dragging his prisoner toward the station's holding area, too consumed by his own anger to notice the growing horror on the faces around him. Too deaf to hear the whispers spreading through the crowd like wildfire. Someone in the back shouted, "That's a naval officer. You just arrested a naval officer." Marcus Webb's blood ran cold. But it was already too late. 3 days earlier, James Okonkwo had always believed in doing things the right way. James looked at his father. "What are you saying, Dad?" Emmanuel met his eyes. "I'm saying don't let this go. Don't just survive it and move on. Fight back. Not for revenge, for change. Because if Marcus Webb did this to you, a naval officer with every advantage, what's he doing to young black men who don't have your education, your rank, your resources?" The question hung in the air. James thought about the teenagers he'd seen at Penn Station, walking in groups, talking loud, wearing hoodies. He thought about how Webb might see them. How many of them had Webb stopped, searched, humiliated? How many had filed complaints that went nowhere? "You're right," James said quietly. "I usually am." Emmanuel smiled, then grew serious again. "But son, if you do this, if you really go after him, it's going to get ugly. They'll dig into your life. They'll look for anything to discredit you. The police union will fight back. Some people will call you divisive, anti-cop, a troublemaker." "I know. And you're prepared for that?" James thought about the 18 months he'd spent coordinating logistics for an entire fleet. He thought about the hurricane relief mission in Puerto Rico where he'd worked 72 hours straight to get supplies to devastated communities. He thought about briefing admirals, managing million-dollar budgets, earning the respect of sailors who'd initially doubted whether someone so young deserved his rank. "Dad, I've faced worse than bad press." Emmanuel squeezed his shoulder. "Then I'm proud of you. Your mother would be too." After his father left, James made a decision. He opened his laptop and composed an email to David Chun, the attorney from Penn Station. "Mr. Chun, This is Lieutenant Commander James Okonkwo. I've decided to pursue legal action against Officer Marcus Webb and the Transit Police. If your offer still stands, I'd like to discuss representation. I'm available to meet this week. Respectfully, James Okonkwo. He hit send before he could second-guess himself. Then he called Captain Rodriguez. It was past midnight, but Rodriguez had said to call any time. The captain answered on the second ring. Okonkwo. Sir, I apologize for the late hour. James, I told you to call. I've been waiting. Are you okay? Yes, sir. Physically, I'm fine. But not otherwise.
No, sir.
Not otherwise. There was a pause. I saw the video. I've watched it 4 times now. Each time I get angrier. That officer had no right, no legal justification for what he did to you. I know, sir. The Navy's Public Affairs Office wants you to make a statement. They want to support you publicly, but they need your permission first. This is going to be national news, James. Maybe international. A U.S. naval officer detained and handcuffed for no reason? It's a nightmare for police-military relations. What do you think I should do, sir? Rodriguez was quiet for a long moment. Off the record? Yes, sir. Make them pay. Not just Webb, the whole system that allowed this to happen. You're in a unique position, James. You have credibility, you have rank, you have an impeccable record. When you speak, people listen. Use that. And on the record, sir? On the record, I'll support whatever decision you make. But I want you to know, the entire command at Rhoda is behind you. We've got your 6.
Thank you, sir.
That means everything. One more thing, James. Take your full leave. Don't rush back. Process this. Heal from it. And if he went downstairs and made a brief statement to the reporters, keeping it simple. I appreciate everyone's concern and support. I'm working with legal counsel to ensure what happened to me doesn't happen to others. That's all I can say right now. The reporters shouted questions. Will you sue the transit police? Do you think this was racially motivated? What did Officer Webb say to you in that room? How does the Navy feel about this incident? James ignored them all and went back inside. At 2 p.m., he met with David Chun at his law office in downtown Baltimore. Chun's firm occupied the 15th floor of a modern glass building with a view of the Inner Harbor. The attorney's office was filled with books, legal diplomas, and photographs of Chun with various civic leaders. Thank you for coming, Chun said, shaking James's hand. Can I get you coffee? Water. Water would be great. They sat, and Chun opened a thick folder. I've been doing my homework. Officer Marcus Webb, age 48, 23 years with the Transit Police. 7 civilian complaints, all dismissed. 2 use-of-force incidents that were investigated and cleared. 1 lawsuit settled out of court for an undisclosed amount. The Transit Police protected him every time. Sounds like a pattern. It is a pattern. And patterns can be used in court to show a history of misconduct. Now, here's what I'm proposing. We file a federal civil rights lawsuit under Section 1983, deprivation of rights under color of law. We name Webb as the primary defendant, but we also name the Transit Police for failure to properly train and supervise. We're looking at false arrest, unlawful detention, excessive force with those handcuffs, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. What kind of timeline are we talking about? These cases can take years. But with the video evidence, the witness statements, your impeccable record, and Webb's history, I think we can push for a settlement within 18 months. I don't want a settlement. Chun looked up from his notes. I'm sorry. I don't want a quiet settlement where everyone signs NDAs and moves on. I want accountability. I want Webb fired. I want the Transit Police to change their policies. I want other officers to think twice before they do what Webb did to me. Chun leaned back in his chair, studying James. That's admirable. But it's also harder, more expensive, and more personally taxing. A trial means you'll be cross-examined, attacked, forced to relive that day over and over. The police union will come after you with everything they have. I understand. And you're still willing to do it? Mr. Chen, I'm a naval officer. I don't take the easy route just because it's comfortable. Chen smiled. Then I'm definitely the right attorney for you. I don't like easy cases anyway. They're boring. They spent the next 2 hours going over every detail of what happened at Penn Station. Chen recorded James's account, took notes, asked probing questions. By the end, James felt exhausted but also strangely lighter. Telling the story to someone who believed him, who was prepared to fight for him, it helped. At 4 p.m., James met Maya Johnson at a coffee shop near Johns Hopkins University. She'd brought her professor, Dr. Angela Wright, a distinguished black woman in her 60s who taught investigative journalism. Lieutenant Commander, Dr. Wright said, Maya's shown me the footage she captured. It's powerful and disturbing. If you're willing, I'd like to help her turn this into a comprehensive piece, not just about what happened to you, but about the broader pattern of police misconduct against people of color, even those who've served their country. The interview went viral within hours of being posted. By the next morning, it had been viewed over 5 million times. News networks picked it up: CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, BBC. Everyone wanted to talk about the naval officer who'd been humiliated at Penn Station. James's phone didn't stop ringing. Interview requests from Good Morning America, The Today Show, 60 Minutes. Calls from civil rights organizations, veterans groups, congressional staffers. Even the secretary of the Navy's office reached out. Emmanuel watched his son navigate this new reality with a mixture of pride and concern. "You're handling this well," he said over breakfast on the third day. "I don't feel like I'm handling it well. I feel like I'm drowning." "That's because you're in the deep end now, son. But you're a strong swimmer." Miss Gloria had taken to screening James's calls, writing down messages in her neat handwriting. She handed him a list. "This one's from a senator. This one's from the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. This one's from Oprah's production company." James stared at that last one. "Oprah?" "That's what the lady said. Oprah wants to interview you." "This is insane." "This is important," Miss Gloria corrected. "You're giving voice to something a lot of people have experienced but couldn't talk about. Don't diminish that." David Chin called with an update. "The transit police have offered a settlement. They want this to go away." "How much?" $250,000. Webb gets fired but no admission of wrongdoing. You sign an NDA. James didn't even hesitate.
No.
"I told them you'd say that. They'll come back with a higher offer." "The answer will still be no."
Good.
"Because I want to take this to trial. I want to put Marcus Webb on the stand and make him explain himself. I want to depose everyone in the transit police command structure who ignored complaints about him. I want to expose the whole system. Then let's do it." That afternoon, James did an interview with Anderson Cooper for CNN. Cooper was respectful, thoughtful, asking questions that got to the heart of the matter. "You've served your country for 12 years, Cooper said. "You've earned medals for your service. How did it feel to have that service questioned, dismissed, treated as fraudulent?" James thought carefully before answering. "It felt like being erased. Like everything I'd accomplished, every deployment, every mission, every sleepless night working to support our fleet, meant nothing because one officer decided I looked suspicious. And that's the insidious part of this kind of discrimination. It doesn't matter what you achieve. It doesn't matter how you carry yourself. To some people, you'll always be guilty until proven innocent." What would you say to Officer Webb if he was sitting here right now? "I'd ask him why. Why me? What specifically made him think I was a criminal? Because I was a black man carrying a duffel bag? Because I spoke confidently? Because I didn't immediately defer to his authority?" James leaned forward. "And then I'd ask him how many others. How many other black men has he stopped, searched, detained without cause? How many lives has he disrupted because of his bias?" The interview was powerful. Clips from it played on every news channel for the next 2 days. But with the attention came backlash. The Police Benevolent Association held a press conference defending Webb. Officer Webb is a dedicated public servant with over 2 decades of exemplary service. He was following department protocols when he stopped Lieutenant Commander Okonkwo. This rush to judgment against a police officer doing his job is dangerous and demoralizing to law enforcement across the country. Conservative pundit, the complaint was dismissed by Internal Affairs. Webb was bragging about it in the break room, saying he knew how to handle troublemakers. James's jaw tightened. Do you know the young man's name? Marcus Williams. He's a college student at Hunter. I looked him up. I thought, maybe he'd want to know he's not alone. After Isabel left, James sat with the envelope in his hands. Another victim. How many more were there? He called David Chen. We need to find Marcus Williams. And anyone else Webb has done this to. This isn't just about me anymore. I was hoping you'd say that, Chen said. I've already started looking into Webb's history. I've found 3 other complaints that were dismissed. I think we can build a pattern and practice case, show that this isn't one bad incident, but systematic abuse. Over the next week, James and Chen tracked down Marcus Williams and 2 other men who'd filed complaints against Webb. All of them were black. All of them had been stopped without clear cause. All of them had been treated roughly. And all of them had been silenced, their complaints dismissed, their voices ignored, their experiences invalidated. Marcus Williams was a sophomore at Hunter College, studying engineering. When James met him at a coffee shop in Manhattan, Marcus was visibly nervous. I saw what happened to you, Marcus said. When I saw that video, I started shaking. Because that's exactly what he did to me. Exactly. The same aggression, the same accusations, the same refusal to listen. Tell me what happened. Marcus described being stopped at Penn Station while heading to class. Webb had demanded to search his backpack. When Marcus asked why, Webb grabbed him, shoved him against a wall, and searched him anyway. Found nothing but textbooks and a laptop. No apology. No explanation. Just a warning to watch himself around Penn Station. I filed a complaint, Marcus said. Went through the whole process. Gave a statement. Waited for weeks. Then I got a letter saying the complaint was unfounded, that Officer Webb had acted appropriately. I felt powerless. Like my word meant nothing. Your word means something to me, James said. And it's going to mean something in court. Will you testify? Marcus looked scared. Testify against a cop? That's dangerous, man. I'm just trying to get through college. I don't want trouble. I understand. And I won't pressure you. But Marcus, if we don't speak up, if we let officers like Webb continue operating without consequences, this keeps happening. To me, to you, to the next young black man who walks through that station. Marcus was quiet for a long time. Then he nodded. Okay, I'll testify. 3 months later, the trial began. The federal courthouse in Lower Manhattan was packed. Reporters lined the hallway, cameras ready. Supporters held signs, Justice for Okonkwo, End Police Brutality, Black Lives Matter. James walked through them with David Chen at his side, wearing his navy dress uniform, the same uniform Webb had called fake. Inside the courtroom, Marcus Webb sat at the defense table with 3 attorneys provided by the Police Benevolent Association. He looked older than James remembered, more worn down. Their eyes met for just a moment. Webb looked away first. The trial lasted 2 weeks. David Chen methodically built his case, calling witness after witness. Marcus Williams testified first, his voice shaking but steady as he described his encounter with Webb. He treated me like I was already guilty of something. I kept asking what I'd done wrong, and he just kept saying I was being suspicious. But I was just walking to class. Darius Johnson testified next. I've never been in trouble with the law. Never even had a parking ticket. But Officer Webb searched me like I was a drug dealer, right there in front of everyone. My daughter was with me. She was 7 years old, and she watched her father get humiliated for no reason. Kevin Brown's testimony was particularly powerful. I'm a teacher. I work with kids every day, trying to show them that education and hard work matter. But how do I tell them that when a police officer can stop me, search me, treat me like a criminal, just because of how I look? What lesson is that teaching them? Then it was James's turn. He took the stand in his uniform, placed his hand on the Bible, and swore to tell the truth. David Chin walked him through the events of that day, step by careful step. When Officer Webb first stopped you, what did you think? I thought there must be some misunderstanding. I'd done nothing wrong. I was just walking through the station. When he asked for identification, how did you respond? I immediately complied. I gave him my military ID. And what did he do? He barely looked at it. He'd already decided I was guilty of something. Chun showed the jury the video, the full, unedited footage from multiple angles. They watched Webb's aggression, James's calm compliance, the handcuffs, the humiliating march through the station. Several jurors looked visibly upset. Lieutenant Commander Okonkwo, you've served your country for 12 years. You've earned medals for your service. In that moment, in handcuffs, what did you feel? James took a breath. I felt erased. Like everything I'd accomplished meant nothing. Like I was just another black man who needed to be controlled, contained, punished for existing. The defense wants you to believe this was about safety, about protocol, about good police work. But good police work requires evidence. It requires reasonable suspicion. It requires treating people with dignity and respect. Officer Webb had none of that. He had assumptions. He had bias. He had a pattern of targeting black men that stretches back years. And what did Lieutenant Commander Okonkwo have? He had his military ID. He had his uniform. He had his medals. He had his deployment orders. He had everything necessary to prove who he was, and none of it mattered to Officer Webb. Because this case isn't really about mistaken identity. It's about refusing to see identity at all. It's about a police officer who decided that a black man couldn't possibly be a naval officer, couldn't possibly deserve respect, couldn't possibly be telling the truth. Marcus Williams, Darius Johnson, Kevin Brown, they all experienced the same thing from the same officer. How many more victims are there? How many people didn't have video evidence, didn't have witnesses, didn't have the resources to fight back? You have the power to say, this stops now. You have the power to say, police officers don't get to profile people based on race. You have the power to say, James Okonkwo's service to his country matters. His dignity matters. His rights matter. Don't let Officer Webb erase him. Don't let this pattern continue. Stand up for justice. Stand up for what's right. Find for the plaintiff. The jury deliberated for 8 hours. James spent that time in a private room with his father, Miss Gloria, and David Chun, trying not to think about what would happen if they lost. Whatever happens, Emmanuel said, you did the right thing. You stood up. You fought back. That matters. At 6:47 p.m., the jury returned. The courtroom fell silent as the forewoman stood. She was a black woman in her 50s, a school administrator from Brooklyn. In the matter of Okonkwo versus Webb, on the count of false arrest, we find for the plaintiff. On the count of violation of civil rights, we find for the plaintiff. On the count of intentional infliction of emotional distress, we find for the plaintiff. The courtroom erupted. People cheered, cried, embraced. James felt his father's hand grip his shoulder, felt tears on his own cheeks that he didn't try to hide. On the matter of damages, the forewoman continued, we award Lieutenant Commander Okonkwo $3 million in compensatory and punitive damages. More cheers. David Chun was grinning. We did it. James, we actually did it. But the forewoman wasn't finished. Furthermore, the jury recommends that Officer Marcus Webb be terminated from the Transit Police and that the department undergo comprehensive training on racial bias and civil rights. Webb sat at the defense table, head in his hands. And he never did. A young sailor approached him on deck. Sir, the captain wants to see you. James followed him to the bridge. Captain Rodriguez stood looking at navigational charts, but he turned when James entered. Lieutenant Commander Okonkwo, reporting as ordered, sir. Rodriguez smiled and pulled out a small box. The Secretary of the Navy asked me to present this to you personally. For exceptional courage and service to the United States Navy both in and out of uniform. He opened the box. Inside was a Navy and Marine Corps medal, one of the highest non-combat awards. You don't have to wear it if you don't want to, Rodriguez said quietly. I know you've got mixed feelings about recognition right now. James looked at the medal, thinking about all his other medals scattered on the floor at Penn Station. Thinking about Webb dismissing them as fake. Thinking about earning this one not through combat, but through simply refusing to accept injustice. I'll wear it, sir. With pride. Rodriguez pinned it to his uniform. The Navy's lucky to have you, James. Don't let what happened make you forget that. I won't, sir. If anything, it reminded me why I serve. To protect rights that everyone should have, but not everyone does. That evening, James video called his father. Emmanuel answered, Miss Gloria hovering in the background. Dad, I've been thinking. When my deployment ends, I want to use my leave to do something. What's that, son? I want to start speaking to young people at schools, community centers, wherever they'll listen. I want to tell them what happened to me, but more importantly, I want to tell them they don't have to accept injustice, that their voices matter, that they can fight back. Emmanuel's eyes glistened. Your mother used to say you were born to do something important. I think she was right. I learned it from both of you. Then we did our job as parents. Miss Gloria pushed into frame. James Okonkwo, you better be coming home for Thanksgiving. I'm making your mama's sweet potato pie. I wouldn't miss it, Miss Gloria.